Much of it is going to projects with names like Beans for Women's Empowerment or Gender Just Low Carbon Rice Value Chains.
Here we go again. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today I've been doing some digging. It turns out Mark Carney's been dishing out contracts to a company that he probably shouldn't have. We also have Brookfield in the news again, doing more business with China. We've got a bunch of other stuff here. Let's jump into this. We've got Andy Lee with this one. As Canadians struggle, the government hands out $60,000 grants to charities for cookbooks. It's illustrated, but still cookbooks. The Family Ties Illustrated Community Cookbook. 60 grand. This is where taxpayer money is going. It's great to have a cookbook and not being able to afford groceries. You can just give the cookbook to the family so they can look at the yummy meals they can't afford. Win-win. What a great use of tax dollars. I mean, look at this one. This is getting so preposterous. So Mark Carney went to White Rock, which is a kind of outskirts of Greater Vancouver. He went down to the pier. You're looking at the original post here. White Rock Pier is an iconic BC destination and economic driver. MP Ernie Klassen and the community have been working to restore and preserve it. So we're stepping in and investing to revitalize the pier in budget 2025 with more local infrastructure projects across Canada that build community strong.
I learned from Ernie that the pier needs some work. We're just going to take a look. We're going to fix the pier. Ernie's the engineer. I'm going to get a can of paint. We're going to get it done. It's actually in the budget, so it's as it.
Okay, so fixing the pier does not involve a can of paint. That wasn't the problem with the pier, and they already rebuilt it. It's done. As Barbara Ball pointing out here, it was done in 2019. They already fixed the White Rock Pier. What is Carney doing here? He's just making up nonsense. Oh, we're investing, building Canada strong. Projects that were finished 6 years ago. Let's bounce over to the CTV here. We've got Laurie Turnbull, who brings up some very valid points too on these major projects and the whole projects office situation with Don Farrell.
What is your assessment on the Prime Minister's strategy? Is that fair criticism from Pierre Poilievre that these are just projects that were already going to happen anyway, and the major projects office is just another layer of red tape?
Well, he's not the only one making the point that some of these projects, and including the 5 that had been announced previously as well, that these were things that were already in motion, there was already buy-in, there were already some regulatory moves there to make sure that they were going to happen. And so to the extent that people feel like, this stuff was going to happen anyway, they're wondering why the Prime Minister is standing up and saying this is a new development and we should be really happy about it. As far as the extra layer of red tape in the major projects office, I think this is going to be something that starts to stick in terms of if the government keeps on going and announcing new projects. What is the major projects office doing? Like, it sounds like the government is making recommendations to the office about what projects should be considered for to be determined as in the national interest. And then the office makes a recommendation back to the government to say, we think this should happen. And then the cabinet makes a decision. It's like, why don't you just make the decision to start off with? So I think that there is potentially some traction to what Pierre Poilievre is saying.
Once again, as she said, it goes from the government to the projects office, back to the government. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. We're paying for people like Don Farrell $600,000 a year because she was connected to Mark Carney, a trusted insider. As we see with this section here on my chart, Don Farrell was sitting on the board of ATCO, a modular housing company that, by the way, just got money from the Liberal government. Here we have it. It's not just one contract. There's 3 pages of them, and just starting at May 2025. This goes back even earlier, but ATCO Structures and Logistics, $30,000. ATCO Frontec, this is the logistics department of ATCO, the modular home building company, $11,000. We got another one here, $18,000, $435,000. This is in the middle of the summer here, June 10th, $175,000, June 25th, $283,000, $367,000, $861,000, September 1st. Going to ATCO, another $384,000, $422,000, September 23rd. ATCO getting piles of taxpayer money. When Dawn Farrell was sitting on the board of this, and now she's the major projects office manager for Mark Carney. Even just a few days into Mark Carney becoming prime minister, there's contracts here. And sure, maybe some of these were set up. These are all government contracts. But if Mark Carney has connections and ties to this, he should be selling his stocks. That's what should be happening here if we need the services from ATCO. This is page 3. Go to page 2. September 1st, March 13th, May 9th, June 23rd, ATCO. So many government contracts. Mark Carney shouldn't be allowed to hold shares in a company that is a major investor, one of the biggest investors of this company. It's an indirect, direct conflict of interest. And just so you can see here, right on ATCO's own website, it's cut off. You can see here, ATCO, mobile offices, modular buildings, etc. Just so you don't have to take my word for it, right here on their corporate group information, we have ATCO Structures and Logistics Business, as we saw here, ATCO Structures and Logistics, and this one, ATCO Frontec Limited, which is right down here, ATCO Frontec, bringing decades of experience in facility operations, maintenance, etc. Carney's giving tons of money to a company he's connected to here. And not only that, Mark Carney has shares in BlackRock, who's invested in ATCO. I have this all broken down right on my chart here. ATCO Limited, and you can see the ownership here, top institutional holders, and near the top here, we've got BlackRock. Going over to Mark Carney's investments, we've got BlackRock right here. Now, while this isn't a direct conflict of interest, it is indirect. It's close enough. Not to mention there's two connections here with Don Farrell and Carney's own investments. This is ridiculous. In other news, we got Brookfield Sequoia Capital China partner on new economy infrastructure. Brookfield Asset Management, the Toronto-based real assets investment manager and venture capital company Sequoia Capital China, announced on Thursday a strategic partnership focused on supporting entrepreneurs building companies on the mainland. This is talking about the mainland China. In separate news release, the two companies said Brookfield has become the largest limited partner of the Sequoia China Infrastructure Fund, which Sequoia announced it had closed Thursday. Other than that, they're not telling us anything. Now, if you've been a long-time viewer of the channel, you know where this is going. It's going over to this section of the board because I've already got Sequoia Capital on here and their investments in Chinese tech very briefly mentioned on here, $9 billion in investment. So they already have this going. And who is running that? Michael Moritz, former partner at Sequoia Capital. And who sat on the board of Stripe with Mark Carney? It was Michael Moritz. That's right. That's where this connection is. Both these guys sat on the boards here. I got all the dates here. Michael Moritz invested $100 million in Stripe. He's in on this whole green grift too, just like Mark Carney. Mark Carney, board member from February 2021 to January 2025. And Michael Moritz was from February 2011, so 10 years earlier to late 2023. So a couple years overlap, these guys sitting on the same board here of Stripe. I'm sure they had a lot to talk about Sequoia Capital, Chinese tech. I don't know if Michael Moritz is involved with Sequoia Capital, any of this deal going on with Chinese tech and Brookfield, but there's a lot of ties there with Brookfield doing that deal with China. What do we see? Former Canadian diplomat Michael Korvig is warning Canadian government against making China the core of its economic diversification strategy because it's not geopolitically a reliable partner.
Do you foresee any world in which China stops those kinds of practices? And I ask you because we're now facing a situation where there are many people in this country who are writing op-eds and advocating for turning directly to China in a commensurate fashion, in a commensurate way to the degree that we turn away from the U.S.
I would strongly avoid that framework, frankly. Diversification is, I think that's really the bedrock of Mark Carney's economic strategy as far as increasing Canada's resilience and reducing dependencies. We do want to reduce the extreme dependency we have on the U.S. market, but let's face it, it's always going to be there to some extent. We can just try to mitigate it. And he seems to have a 10-year plan to try to do that, and I think that's realistic. Making China the core of that strategy, not a good idea because it's not geopolitically a reliable partner, and as it's demonstrated time and again, if you create dependency on China, it will weaponize it for political purposes and to silence Canada and constrain our foreign policy. So what you need instead is diversification across multiple partners. If you increase trade to China, but at the same time you increase trade with Indonesia, with India, with Japan, with Europe, and that balances out, as long as you make sure that China doesn't have too much leverage over any one Canadian company or sector, that can be part of a strategy. But it's got to be managed holistically that way. I think just turning and deepening relations with China, they will weaponize that and use that against us to constrain our own foreign policy freedom. And that would be very dangerous. And frankly, what we need to realize, if we want to be realistic about it, we need not just short-term pragmatism, but a long-term vision of principled realism to protect the country's interests and values. The United States will react negatively if we are perceived as tilting too rapidly toward China, and there would be costs to that. So this all needs to be balanced.
But maybe that's what they want to do. That's the question. Carney not exactly getting a deal with Trump, despite 91% of his stocks in America, and the guy is business partners with Xi Jinping. He can't be trusted. Genuine communist dictator, cheap Chinese knockoff. No conflict of interest at all. Trudeau's donors show Liberals will partner with China. Vassy should have Sam Cooper on as a guest, but she won't. Yeah, she really should. Next up, check this out. Far Off Ripoff segment here has made it to Parliament. We got two stories here. One is the beans for women, whatever that one was, and then the gender rice out of Vietnam. And full credit, Andy Lee found the Vietnam rice one.
In Channels, Minister, we see 8.4 billion Canadian tax dollars being spent within the foreign aid envelope. Much of it is going to projects with names like Beans for Women's Empowerment or Gender Just Low Carbon Rice Value Chains.
So that Beans for Women Empowerment, I've had that on the channel before. All these things are ridiculous. I'm very pleased to see Leanne here, Conservative, bringing this stuff up.
Or being funneled through organizations like the UN or the World Bank. What return on investment or outcomes can Canadians see coming from this that improves their lives?
Look, there's a lot of programs, over 2,000 programs that the ministry administers. Great programs. Some you may have issues with their names, but their intent is great. When in context for the Greening Our Rice, the Gender Just Right, it's a project that Oxfam aims to promote low carbon rice value chains in Vietnam. It increases women's participation. It's developed through broad consultations with government donors and civil society, and it sustains, increases production of more sustainable rice, and it increases the livelihood of small rice producers, particularly women.
What a load of crap. We all know this is a bunch of money laundering. You guys are not doing any of that with this money. Prove it. Send someone over there with a camera and prove it. Go to every single one of these projects. I want to see a video of you guys empowering women and making the lives better of all these people in Africa and Vietnam or wherever else. You guys aren't doing any of this.
And on that note, Vietnam's one of our top trading partners in the ASEAN, and it's a major supplier of our affordable rice. So these are mutually beneficial programs. If we can improve the lives of local farmers, increase women's participation, increase their yields using less water, more climate resilient crops, we also, as Canadians, get a more affordable base for our rice, so which is an affordable starch and much needed supplement, I guess, or food source for many Canadians.
That is a joke, dude. The price of rice is not going down because we're making it low carbon in Vietnam. Do we even buy that rice that all this money for this program was sent to? Probably not. And even if we do, what's the price difference? If anything, it's going to be more expensive. Anytime you have any of these low carbon initiatives, it makes it more expensive, not less expensive. Why would it make it less expensive if they brought in women to learn how to use all this low carbon methods and less water and this, that, and the other? Why would it be less expensive? This is a bunch of poppycock. This guy is full of crap.
Similarly with, I think you mentioned there, international development banks and others, we support them, and now we're doing it more innovatively by giving them capital, using blended finance means and others, so we can attract private capital to help build some of the infrastructure needs in those countries, from ports to storage facilities for food supplies and others. And these are the type of things that we're doing to help make I guess a mutually beneficial, but also a resilient economy for the states that are the recipients.
This is a resilient money laundering scheme. Why? Because you can't audit the money once it's out of the country. Now, it is interesting you mentioned sending money over to financial institutions like the World Bank. By the way, I broke this story last year, $3.44 billion from 2015 to 2025 that Canada has sent to the World Bank. That's not million, that's billion. You know how many projects we could fund with that $3.488 billion? This is absurd. Not to mention, if you're new around here and haven't seen this one, Oxfam report found $41 billion from the World Bank went unaccounted for. A bunch of countries around the world fund the World Bank, including Canada at almost $3.5 billion, and they lost $41 billion. If this isn't money laundering scheme, I don't know what is. Prove it. Show where all the money is. Every dollar should be audited and should be public information. If it's coming from taxpayers from around the world, we should see every dollar accounted for. Otherwise, they're stealing taxpayers' money from around the world. We got this one. Norway just hit the $2 trillion milestone as savings fund, so big it equals $340,000 for every citizen. This is what Canada should be doing. They built this wealth off of oil and gas. We could do the same thing, but our government is full of corruption. So sadly, that's not happening. And we've got this post here. This is truly mind-blowing. Norway has gone from near zero sales of non-emitting battery electric vehicles now to close to 100%. So what we're looking at, this blue, is basically sales of EVs. So they're nearly 100% in Norway. And in comparison, we've got Canada Canada here, and you can see the sales of EVs was picking up, and then it dove off a cliff here. And the reason is simple. Norway has a very temperate climate based on how the warm swells of water in the ocean go up to Norway. It keeps it very temperate. The lowest temperatures in a lot of those cities goes down to is only 4 degrees. The country of Norway fits into many of our provinces like Newfoundland, Alberta. It's not a big place, and most of the population lives on the bottom half of Norway. It's only an hour and a half, 2 hours max, 3 hours between the cities. So EVs work great there. It's a perfect place for those kind of vehicles. You don't have to drive that far, and the weather works perfect for the batteries. They did that with a sovereign wealth fund built on oil and gas. And speaking of which, we have Japan eager for more energy critical minerals from Canada. Unfortunately, I don't think anything's going to happen there because the Liberals don't like prosperity for Canadians. One thing that CBC is proud to announce about the Liberals on CBC is this.
2 federal ministers are at the COP30 conference in Brazil, touting Canada's commitment to climate action. That includes an announcement of hundreds of millions of dollars to finance projects around the world. The CBC's international climate correspondent, Susan Ormiston, has details now from the summit in northeastern Brazil.
The Environment and Climate Change Minister, Julie de Brussen, announced $392 million for development projects going to those countries who are suffering the most from climate change.
This is unbelievable. This is absolute disgrace to our own citizens here. We have people sleeping in cars and tents that have jobs, and this is where they spend our money. As Douglas points out here, this is what this is. The laundry machines are running full steam at COP30. They cut down a 4-lane highway in the Amazon rainforest to build a building just for this. And it got filled with protesters because it's so outrageous. Okay, so the sounds are pretty chaotic. We'll have to turn that off, but you can see protesters flooded in there because, well, they cut down the rainforest to build this environmental climate building. Hypocrisy off the charts.